Do you need a cordless belt sander? We're going to dive deep into the Kobalt 24V 3-inch belt sander in just a moment. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. This is the Kobalt KBS124B-03, and it's their 3-inch belt sander. Brushless motor, runs on their 24-volt battery platform. Now let's take a deeper look at each one of these specs as well as the features. Then we'll use this on some hardwood and see what we think about it. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about pricing, we'll talk about warranty, and then what stood out to us, whether that be good or bad. See you in a moment. This is the Kobalt 24-volt 3-inch belt sander. So it runs a 3-inch wide by 18-inch long belt, has their brushless motor, so you get the efficiency and the power of a brushless motor, so longer run times and more power delivered to the business end of this unit, or to the belt, if you will. We've got the 2 amp hour battery on there, but obviously we could run any of the 24-volt batteries. You do get an adjustable handle here with easily unlocking this right here. You'll have 4 different indexed locations where you can put this handle from, almost flat to here, and then almost tucked away and out of your way, and you could use that one-handed if you needed to. Although a belt sander is going to be pretty tough to use one-handed. But anyway, you can lock those in those index positions. Now I can tighten this thumb screw down and lock that into place. Now we don't get a variable speed trigger, so basically that's just an on-off. So you get a soft start, but there's no variable speed in the trigger, but we don't really need it, especially when we're belt sanding. And we've got a dial here that's going to give us 6 different speeds. Now I did notice something here. You do have half steps in between these two, or in between these 6 different numbers on the dial. However, the speed does not change on those half steps, only at the full step. So you'll see here at 4 is the same as 3.5. And then at 3, you'll hear it step down. Now the speed here is 400 to 1,000 feet per minute on the belt speed. And you get an adjustable dial here where you can set the tracking on that belt to make sure that you're tracking right on the plate here. We'll show that here in a moment. You want to make sure when you're using a belt sander that it's not coming over here and eating into the body of your belt sander, and also that it's not walking off the edge either. So these 2 rubber rollers here on the fore and aft, or on the front and the back, that's controlling your tracking. And again, with this knob you can adjust that easily with no tools needed. Now over here on the port side, you get a 1 1/4 inch port, so you can hook up your shop vac or a dust extractor to be able to pull some of that dust out. Comes with a dust bag, also comes with an O-ring right here, and it is an indexed hole here, so you can't just slide it on any way you want to and slide that on. I don't put a lot of belief here into these dust ports on these belt sanders. I rarely ever see them work well. We'll see once we start sanding, but that's not a big deal to me anyway. Typically when I'm breaking out the belt sander, I'm doing some pretty heavy cutting, not some fine cutting, and you're just going to deal with the dust. Again, I haven't seen a lot of belt sanders that do dust collection really well, so I'm not expecting much with this one. Let's check out the weight on this. And we'll turn this on, and we'll weigh it with the 2 amp hour battery. So we're looking at 7 pounds 5 ounces, so a little less than 7.5 pounds. And we'll go ahead and throw a 4 amp hour battery on there as well if you're doing a lot of sanding. So from 7 pounds 5 ounces to 8 pounds, so just over 8 pounds. So you're looking at about 11 ounces heavier, so about 3/4 of a pound heavier, going up to the 4 amp hour versus the 2 amp hour battery. So that extended run time, 4 amp hour battery is going to put you right over 8 pounds for this tool. But at the same time though, this is one of those tools where you want a little weight, and it's going to do more work for you, so you don't have to apply much weight. So that doesn't mind. I don't mind that much in the weight of a tool like this, because you're not really carrying it per se. You're actually using it to do work for you. Now let's put this to use and see what we think of it. Okay, on this thing, we've got a 3-inch 80 grit belt on here, and first let's make sure this thing's tracking properly. And I'm going to turn this on about the middle. I'm going to go speed 3 here. Got to be very careful here when you're running a tool like a belt sander with it on there. So I'm going to pull the trigger. And that's actually tracking pretty well. I'll show you how easily you can get this off or bring it back on. So you see it's trying to walk off, and if I put pressure on there, it would probably go ahead and try to walk off more. And bring that in. And you always want to make an adjustment and let it run a few seconds. That's about right. That's about where I want it. I've got about equal amounts of the steel plate there sticking out of both sides. And we'll try running it there. If I see it starting to walk one way or the other, I'll make a fine adjustment and make sure that's tracking better. Now, what we have here is a sample of some small cutting boards. We're actually doing a project with some young teenagers. We're teaching them woodworking, so we had them do some glue ups, and there's just some pieces. I believe there's some ash, there's some cedar in here, there's some poplar in here, but you see we got some pretty uneven glue ups here. We got some sticking up here, and I'm just going to, almost like a planer, that would probably be the right thing to do, would be to run this through a thickness planer. But we're just going to take the belt sander and just knock this down to where it's somewhat smooth, to when they can take some finer grit sandpaper and actually smooth these out. So let's see how well this does. I'm also going to start a timer with the 2 amp hour battery. We've got a full charge on this. And so I'm going to go ahead and start a timer while we're sanding these to see how much run time we get out of this 2 amp hour battery. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm not going with the grain or against the grain. I'm just going to keep this moving so I'm not eating into any of this wood here. I think I'm going to bring a little more speed into it. By the way, we also have a trigger lock here. If I can pull that trigger, engage that trigger lock. So that works a lot nicer when I'm doing things like this. So it's knocking it down pretty well, but I've still got a pretty deep valley right here with some glue on it. And I want you to notice something. I've got a lot of sawdust right there. Like I said, I don't hold a lot of faith in any of these bag systems on any of the sanders. That's nothing against Kobalt. It's almost a waste to even put those. We are collecting some, but I would say equal amount is here on the boards as well. And again, that's to say with just about any sander that you're at least getting it at this type of pricing. Maybe some high dollar like a Festool might do a lot better. But as far as a belt sander, I really haven't seen one that does a better job at dust collection. But again, that's across the board, not just the Kobalt here. We'll go ahead and turn it up to speed 6. As far as power, it does a very good job. It doesn't seem to be bogging. I'm not putting a lot of pressure down, letting it do the work. But the belt doesn't seem to be walking. It seems to be staying straight. See, I've still got the metal sticking out there and there. So it's not walking off. It doesn't seem to be getting out of shape at all. And the power seems to be fine. Okay, so we got right at 8 minutes of runtime out of that 2 amp hour battery. So you see we're dead on our 2 amp hour battery. So 8 minutes of runtime on a 3-inch belt sander off a 2 amp hour battery is not bad at all. That means on a 4 amp hour, typically when you double in your battery size, you'll typically get more than double runtime because of the area under the curve. I could explain all that in battery terminology, but basically there's a full charge status and a dead status, and in between there's kind of the curve where you're getting all your use time, if you will. And again, you're having the same kind of ramp up, ramp down on a smaller and a bigger battery, so you have more time under that, you know, median curve with a larger battery. So typically you'll more than double a run time. So again, 8 minutes of run time on that 2 amp hour. So that's not bad. That's, you know, more than 15 minutes of runtime with a 4.0 battery. I would recommend a 4.0 battery, at least a 4 amp hour battery for sanding if you're going to buy a tool like this versus a 2 amp hour, unless all your jobs are real small. But typically with a belt sander, you're typically going to do a little bit of a larger job anyway, for the most part. Maybe not, but anyway, other than that, hey, great power. Pretty impressed with that. I'm very impressed with it, and especially for the price. You know, I did notice something. I'm definitely getting more RPMs out of the 4 amp hour than I did with the 2. So that's something to realize as well with this. And this is not even their max performance. This is just their extended runtime battery. But I am picking up RPMs on this. Looks a lot better than when we started. We really had the perfect opportunity to review this Kobalt 24V Brushless belt sander with these small cutting boards that we were helping these young teenagers kind of understand the art of woodworking, and more or less just understanding how to rip some wood, how to use a miter saw, and then to do some glue up. So we had some pretty out of shape cutting boards, a lot of imperfections in the height, some glue in there, so just some really rough stuff that we needed to take down. And this little cordless belt sander did really, really well. Especially with the 4 amp hour battery, we definitely noticed a step up in power, so would definitely recommend that. I would recommend that on the runtime side anyway. I just ran the 2 amp hour to see how much runtime we could get out of it. So getting 8 solid minutes of sanding, that's a pretty good length of time, because again, looking at a 4 amp hour should give you at least 15 minutes of runtime. So that's going to give you a good amount of sanding. If you're doing longer than that, and you probably want a corded sander anyway, looking at like a belt sander is a lot like a grinder in the fact that you're never going to equal that power and, or not necessarily the power. I think we're there on the power, but as far as runtime, if you're doing a lot of belt sanding, you probably want to stick with a cord. But this Kobalt 24V belt sander did very, very well. Again, the model number is the K124B-03, or it's actually the KBS124B-03. This is $139 from Lowe's, or you can get it from Lowe's.com. Comes with a 5-year warranty. Now that does not include any batteries. The battery set you see here, a 2 amp hour and a 4 amp hour with the charger. I believe that's going to run you about $129 right now, and that includes a 3-year warranty. So this would be separate from this tool. So bare tool, $139. Is it worth it? I would say if you're already on the Kobalt platform and you already have Kobalt batteries, absolutely. It's a great tool to add to your arsenal, especially if you're doing some woodworking, doing some DIY projects. It's a great tool to have. if you're having to step out, buy this battery kit, buy this tool, well, that's a pretty steep, price there. You're looking at what, $270 to buy both these, or $270 to buy both of these. So that's a pretty big step, but at the same time, it may be worth it, again, if you expand those Kobalt tools, because you'll already have batteries. So that's just my 2 cents, if you will. But as far as power, as far as runtime, we were very impressed with this. I do wish there were kind of half speeds in between those steps in the 6-speed dial. And as I mentioned, the dust collection, it's just not great. But again, I haven't seen a belt sander that does good at dust extraction. It may do a lot better when you're creating that vacuum with a shop vac, but as far as just the dust bag, it's not going to collect a lot of that dust for you. Probably less than half, or right at half when you're actually sanding. So you're still going to have plenty of residual, as you can see here, to deal with, even with that dust bag. But hey, make sure you check it out for yourself. Also keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And hey, would you mind hitting that like and subscribe button, but only if you liked our videos. If you didn't like our videos, by all means, give us that thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.